frequency.
Your protection from deception. This is Truth Frequency Radio.
Welcome, listeners and viewers from across America and around the world. I'm your host, Zen Garcia. This is Secrets Revealed here on Truth Frequency Radio. I'm honored to have as co-host with me this evening, Laurel Austin. Laurel, are you there, sister?
I'm here. Hello, Zen.
Hello, and thank you for joining us. And we also have as special guests both Stephen and Jana Ben Noon. Stephen and Jana, are y'all there?
Yes, shalom. How are you doing, all of you?
We are here.
Shalom, and thank you for joining us. For those that are, which I'm sure most people have heard and know about your work, but for those that don't know, both Stephen and Jana are the hosts for Israeli News Live on YouTube and other platforms, and also the Ben-Nun Institute, and have done incredible work in keeping the world abreast of what's going on in the Middle East with Israel and all the other aspects of, current events and what's up with world. And so for that, we greatly appreciate all of you. Stephen, do you want to give out the website and any contact information? Jana as well, anything that you'd like to share with the listening audience?
Absolutely. Thank you, Zen, for having us on. And Laurel, we really appreciate this time to get to spend with you. And our website is israelinewslive.org, pretty simple. And also you can check us out. Everything is actually Israeli News Live. If you go to Facebook, it's Israeli News Live. If you go to YouTube, it's Israeli News Live. Jana does have a channel, though, specifically that she posts on from time to time called Rise Up Children of God on YouTube. And that's our basic platforms there. Of course, we're on Patreon as well, but that's Israeli News Live. So makes it simple and easy.
And then Ben-Nun Institute on YouTube as well, where Stephen posts mainly his biblical teachings.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you very much. And yes, specifically this evening, we are wanting to talk about and bring awareness to the Noahide laws. And for those that are not well versed, which most of the world is not, can you tell us what the Noahide laws are and why they are important, especially for this time now?
Sure. I will start with that, and then, of course, we will give some word to my husband, Steve. Now, the Noahide laws are not well known, of course, among Christians, although for past year, a lot of channels are picking up and warning people about Noahide laws. And I have taken myself a research. I have taken up a research, and I found out about Noahide laws by researching the Talmud. No, I don't even know how should I start talking about it, because subject is so deep. It's really deep, Zen. And one thing I want to say is that Steve and I, we used to be so-called Zionist Christians or Messianic Jews, the Zionist Christians basically who believe Jesus is the Messiah, but we also believe that we are to unconditionally support the state of Israel. We used to have a Facebook unconditionally supporting the state of Israel. No matter what Israel did, we would support Israel because we thought that's the proper way. That's what Bible requires of us. That's what God of Israel wants. So we actually went to live in Israel for a little while. Steve lived there before we got married, but after we got married, we decided to drop everything and go to live in the state of Israel. And this is when we started to see certain things that we didn't like, and it was very difficult to reconcile it with our love for Jesus, for Yeshua, Jesus Christ. And well, Anyway, make a long story really short, I just gave myself into the study of Talmud, Kabbalah, and Zohar. And I have come, and also I have studied and researched Jewish encyclopedia. And by no means I'm done with that. This is only beginning, actually. But I just couldn't be quiet. So I came with my research to my husband, and he was horrified because even as a Jew, I don't think he ever explored Talmud to depths. I mean, he knew about the Talmud. He has some Talmudic writings. We knew about scholars like Rambam, and others. But we have, and Rashi and so on. I don't think Steve ever went deeply into the Talmud, what Talmud really contains. So when I went into the Talmud, I was shocked what I saw. Yes. And one of the things that I saw was the Noahide laws and then when I found out in my research that Noahide laws has been signed into the United States law through Education Day USA, that just brought up a huge red flag, and it's just really, really sickening to find out about this and actually know the plot. Now, what's the plot? Well, the Noahide laws, when you read them, and I can read them off to you, but they seem very innocent at first. They are very similar to the Ten Commandments. And a lot of people, when they read them, they think, well, what's wrong with that? I mean, we agree with everything. So let me go slowly. Number one, the first Noahide law, do not profane God's oneness in any way, okay? Do we have problem with that? I don't think so. We all know God is one, right?
Yes.
Do not curse your creator. Of course not. Do not murder. Very good. Do not eat a limb of living animal. Well, that's good because it's against the torture of animals. So we agree with that. Do not steal. Okay. Harness and channel the human libido, believe or not, okay? So, in other words, do not have any fornication or adultery. Don't do any fornication or adultery. And number 7, establish courts of law and ensure justice in our world. So, could you hear anything negative in these laws? I mean, of course not. It seems like they are good laws. However, when you start researching what these laws are and where they come from, these are not the Ten Commandments. The laws come from Talmud, which is an oral law of the Jews, which is the soul of today's Judaism. Now, the rabbis say that these laws were given to Moses on Mount Sinai to be given to the Gentiles. Okay, these are laws for non-Jews. Now, what's the problem? Problem is that who has the power to interpret these laws? And the power of interpretation was given to the rabbis, to Judaic rabbis. And according to their interpretation, idolatry is basically the worship of Jesus Christ is considered idolatry. So you are actually violating Noahide laws if you believe that Jesus Christ is the Messiah and if you worship him. And according to Encyclopedia Judaica, if you don't follow these Noahide laws, you are going to be beheaded. The capital punishment, okay? The punishment is basically beheading. So this is the problem, that these laws are put in our United States government through Education Day USA. So do you have any further questions about that?
Well,
what these Noahide laws are?
Let me. The thing is, though, is the important point that a lot of people have to understand is right now you are reading these laws from Chabad.org, but there's also another section in Chabad.org, which is the Talmudic side of the Chabad website there. And this is where it begins to give away the Orthodox community's interpretation of the laws. And that's where they become extremely dangerous. And even recently, what I was actually looking up over here that has alarmed us a lot as well, Zen, is that the United States government, Congress, just passed an anti-Semitic bill. And that would seem all in good, but when you look at the verbiage of the bill, it's very disturbing. It's taking away our First Amendment rights. You cannot criticize the state of Israel for any reason. You cannot accuse Jewish people of being the bankers that are ruling the world. They literally have that type of verbiage in there. And it kind of goes hand in hand with the 7 Noahide laws, because to speak what we're speaking today and warning the public about the dangers of the Noahide laws because of the idolatry clause in there of the Noahide laws, this would be considered anti-Semitic based on this new bill that just passed Congress. And if it passes the Senate and the president signs it, we could end up facing jail time
for 20 years.
Up to 20 years for speaking about what we're speaking about today, trying to warn the public, because in reality, this is a antichrist system that is moving forward, and this is what's going to give the power to the beast, so to speak, to be able to wage war against the believers of Yeshua.
Wow,
Mm-hmm.
that is insane, and that's exactly what Bible prophecy also reveals to us as to the last days. It speaks about this kind of occurrence as happening, so it seems to be a setup for exactly what the Bible is revealing as prophecy.
Yes, and the shocking thing is then that it is in United States laws. It was passed, these Noahide laws were passed inside of the education law.
When
was that, Jana?
It was during the time
education law was 1991 under H.W.
Yes,
Bush, right after he got
Wow.
power.
Exactly. He was the one who actually signed them inside of education law. Why education? Well, there is a rabbi by name Cohen. I forgot his first name, but he is a kind of like an ambassador to United Nations for the state of Israel. And he has yearly conventions inside United Nations talking to the UN about Noahide laws. And United Nations has signed up for the Noahide laws, and they recognized formally Noahide laws as incumbent upon all humanity, meaning that something that entire nations have to submit to. And that particular rabbi by name Cohen was talking, and in his speech, he said that they have passed these laws inside United States through Education Day USA. And there was one man from Norway asking him a question during a Q&A, and he says and asked him, well, here in Norway, he says, we are all atheists. We have very small number of Christians in our country. How are you going to pass these laws in Norway? And Rabbi Cohen has answered, well, we have found our loophole in United States. It was really difficult in United States, because of the Constitution, but we have found our loophole to do it through education law. Can you believe this? So they're actually admitting that they have passed it in United States as a law. And now what is really worrying us is that President Trump is talking about bringing Bible back to schools, and a lot of evangelical Christians are very happy about it because they think, oh, well, finally he's going to bring the Bible back to schools. What they don't know is that he's not really bringing Bible, but what he's bringing is education about these Noahide laws.
Yes, because you have to watch, Zen, you have to watch his verbiage, the way the president has spoken. And I went back and I looked at that pretty carefully to see. And it is very deceiving because it doesn't say anything about putting the Bible back in school, but it talks about putting biblical education back in the schools, is what he's saying.
And he doesn't even mention the name of Christ.
Exactly.
Or,
so,
you know.
I guess what really one thing that can sum up this without, before we get really deep into this really concerned me and Jana a lot, and that is, we, especially even ourselves, we were more of, we hate to say it, pro-Zionist, because we were, of course, excited about, biblical prophecy, the way we had looked at it, Israel becoming a nation, looking forward to the Jewish people recognizing Yeshua as Messiah. And in fact, there are a remnant. There is still those Jews that are believing Yeshua to be the Messiah even now, and even on a daily basis. But at the same time, we had not taken the time to separate the state entity from the people themselves that have returned home, longing to see the coming of the Messiah, and not looking for some kind of demonic entity to be that Messiah. And so when I say this, though, what's very disheartening as we watch this continually is the evangelical community, the Hebrew roots community, the Messianic community, just these three here, not even mentioning other groups as well, have really helped fuel and are going to find out they have fueled and built an Antichrist system.
Right.
And won't even realize it. I mean, President Trump's doing the exact same thing. He may have intentions for those that really love him, but hey, the truth is the truth.
Right, exactly. Stephen and Jana, I'm really glad that you have brought this up, because myself, I've taken a lot of flack for not being a supporter. And when I say supporter of Israel, I'm talking about the powers that be that run the country. Now, just like here in America, I support the people, I support the citizenry, I support the soldiers, and those that stand for our freedoms and our truth. But the powers that rule the government, the leadership that bow down to the New World Order and that have these Freemasonic allegiances across the board, that take these blood oaths to the secret societies, I do not support them. And those are the ones that rule here in America and all the other governments of the world, and that that give their allegiance over to the beast. And they are the kings that are spoken about in the Bible, that give their power unto the beast for a single hour and a single day. So just like with there in Israel, that's why I don't support Israel, the government, the state. Just like here in America, the same thing, and all across the board. And so I'm really glad that you also have seen through the illusion of just supporting without examining what that support is, the nation state of Israel. But like yourself, I do believe it is a fulfillment of prophecy, and that it is the blooming of the fig tree, and that the Most High only allows things that fulfill his prophetic means to occur. And so, yeah, I do agree with you on that stance. Laura, let me give you a chance to comment here as well.
Yeah, I just keep thinking about how this creeps in. You've got George H. signing this in 1991, 26 years later, after we've all forgotten about it. Here it is. It's resurfacing now. And I know, as a person who started off in 2015 coming into being Torah observant, we were calling it Hebrew roots then. Other things that have attached themselves with Hebrew roots have made me personally move away from that label. I consider myself more Torah observant and a servant and follower of the Messiah. But when I was first hearing about the oral traditions, I thought, oh, how innocent. That's just how things got passed down through the generations. And it wasn't really until 2017 when I started learning the dangers of the rabbinic Talmudic doctrines. And so thank you, Jana and Stephen, for bringing this information and making us aware of it so that we can have this knowledge and go forth armed.
Yes, absolutely.
I'd like to mention one thing too for Sister Laurel, and because she is such a very close friend as well for us, the really dangerous thing that we have seen, and I think that we've discovered this from the research that we've done, that when it comes to the Hebrew roots and those believers that are searching for the Hebrew roots aspect, this has been something that the Orthodox community has capitalized on. And I say the Orthodox community, that's the elite of the Orthodox community, that they've capitalized on this. Now, you have to understand, if you're not Jewish, they will make it punishable. It'll be a crime for you to keep Torah if you're not Jewish under their laws.
Yes, that's what I want to actually warn everybody who is Torah observant. If you are not Jewish person, if you are not considered Jew, approved by rabbis, okay, that means that your mother had to be a Jew. And if that's not your case and you are Torah observant, you are under death penalty, under Noahide laws and under halakha, which is a Jewish law. And what I say is, no, this is not enforced right now. Absolutely. It sounds very shocking. And this is not to make anybody scared.
But there's another point to this as well.
The time is coming when they are going to enforce this law, because they have prepared it inside of United States law system and European law system, believe it or not. And they're prepared it in China and everywhere where Chabad is, which we need to talk a little bit about Chabad Lubavitch. But according to halakha, any study of the Torah, if a non-Jew studies Torah, he is worthy of death, punishment by death. So this is a very cruel time we are coming to.
Now, the thing is, though, the other point I was going to make about this for the Hebrew Roots movement, for them, what the Jewish community, the elites that have been working on this, and keep in mind, when I say elite, this is not being orchestrated just by a bunch of Orthodox rabbis, although they are involved in this heavily. This is a very political issue as well, in order to govern in the New World Order system. But the thing is, the vulnerability that has happened in the Hebrew Roots community is because of the desire to want to keep 613 Levitical laws as well, has really made this community a target to embrace Noahide laws. And we have seen those that have actually forsaken Yeshua as their Lord were the ones that came from this movement, because once they get you to the point where you're saying, oh, wow, Yeshua, wow, he was a Jew to begin with, and he was a Torah observant Jew as well. And then the next thing you know, as people really dive deep into this, they have Yeshua doing every 613 Levitical laws. But we find in his message, it's not quite that way. He challenges even Torah law. He challenges, like, for example, he says, you've heard it said of them of old time, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But I say unto you, if he smites you on the cheek, turn to him the other one as well. You see, so, and then he goes into all their customs, which is actually is oral law, and he condemns that like crazy. But we find that the deeper people get into Hebrew roots, and I'm not here to discourage someone from keeping the commandments. I don't mean it by that. I'm just trying to make sure that people understand the danger that we have saw people from the returning to the roots, Hebrew roots community, that have forsaken publicly in Israel that Yeshua was indeed the Messiah, and they have lowered him as only a prophet. He was a Jew that kept the commandments, and they became Noahide observant Gentiles instead.
In fact, like 98% of Noahides are ex-Christians or ex-believers in Jesus as the Messiah, which is so disappointing. And even one of our close friends that we have done a conference in Israel, he organized the conference in Israel.
He converted to Judaism.
He converted, actually, he went as far, he actually wanted to be a Jew and converted. He's a Gentile, but he converted to Judaism fully.
But that was a setup. That was, gosh.
But anyway, what you were saying earlier, Zen, that you don't support the state of Israel, and we came to this conclusion ourselves, and we can't support the state of Israel as a political entity,
Right?
Because it doesn't go along with belief in and values of our Lord Jesus Christ.
Exactly.
It clashes, at one point or another, it will clash, because you cannot support those who lead the state of Israel today are children of those who have murdered their own.
Exactly.
So a lot of things.
Hold on, Jana. Okay. We'll be right back. We'll pick it up on the other side. All right, welcome back, everybody. Jana, I want to give you a chance to finish up your thought, and then I'll bring up a point.
Yes, so we were talking about who runs state of Israel today, and the children of those early Zionists that made pacts with Nazi regime, with Hitler, those are the people that run the state of Israel today. They made agreements to bring like some number of Jews to Palestine with money and German products, while to send the others to the camps. So they basically sold out their own people, and they admitted, and there's many books on that subject written by Jews and by very good rabbis. And these are the people today that run the state of Israel. And not to mention that Benjamin Netanyahu in 2014, he was speaking to a group of Orthodox rabbis from a Shas party, which is a party in a Knesset. And he promised them that once Israel will be declared a Jewish state, he's going to make the Talmud the legal code in a state of Israel. That was all over the news. You can Google it. You can put in Google that Netanyahu promises to make Talmud legal code in a state of Israel, and all kinds of news sources will come up, and you can find this news. Well, he has made the Talmud a legal code now officially, and since President Trump has moved the embassy to Jerusalem, and so many evangelicals were so happy, thinking that something wonderful is happening. And then all other nations started to do the same thing. Well, that was when they actually declared Israel to be only Jewish state, right? And this is when the Talmud has passed as a legal code in a state of Israel. So when people support Israel today, don't think you are supporting the true Torah, okay? People are actually supporting the oral law, the Talmud, that is a legal base of the entire state. Entire Judaism. When you speak of Jewish values, Jewish ethics today, think of Babylonian Talmud, because these are their ethics, these are their values.
Except for Karaite Jews. We do have Karaite Jews that
well,
go
maybe
only by Torah.
2% of Jews are Karaites who goes only by Torah, and then of course even less percent, maybe 1%, and maybe even less are the believers in Yeshua. But those are very persecuted in the state of Israel.
Right.
Yes, they're very persecuted. Their houses of worship are attacked by the religious people, and the state of Israel does nothing about it. They're throwing stones at them. And now the state of Israel is even trying to take away their citizenship. And of course, they declare them as non-Jews and traitors to the Jewish race. So you see, this is what people don't understand yet in America, and especially Christians in America. They don't understand that the Torah is not the Talmud is not Torah. That's what I want to say.
Right.
When a Jewish person says the word Torah and a Christian person hears him, the Christian person thinks that the Jewish person is talking about the 5 books of Moses, or what we know as Old Testament, right?
Right.
But it's not what is in the mind of a Jewish person. When Jewish person says the word Torah, what he's talking about is the Talmud first. And then comes the Tanakh as a secondary. Tanakh, which is our Old Testament, has a secondary place in Judaism. In fact, the Talmud, Babylonian Talmud more specifically, has a primary place, and that's what is their authority. In fact, that's a soul. Talmud is the soul of the Jewish people. And in fact, the soul of the Talmud is Kabbalah, along
Right.
with Torah. So now what we have to do is get really familiar with what is really inside the Talmud and what
Yes.
and what the Kabbalah teaches. And I don't know, Zen, if I remember correctly, you came out of New Age, right? At one
Right.
point in life.
Yes. Uh-huh.
You know, in a New Age is a lot of Kabbalistic ideas.
Right.
And then I studied just a little, because I'm only beginning to study Kabbalah to understand the whole thing, so I can bring it to light for people. But the secret teaching of a Kabbalah is very disturbing for Christians, because in a secret teaching of Kabbalah, it says that Jewish people are awaiting for a Leviathan, some kind of a holy snake, who is supposedly their God. You know, and Zohar admits that this great serpent or a holy serpent is actually their God, which is Satan himself.
Uh-huh.
So this is very disturbing, and they call him Leviathan.
Uh-huh.
Supposedly, this Leviathan has promised them world domination,
Right.
and conquering of Gentile nations. And many rabbis, when they refer to Kabbalah these days, they're saying, well, we are at that time now. It's about time. This is why you hear so much about Noahide laws.
So it is truly a battle between the Yeshua. It'll be a battle that'll fulfill itself. The bruising of the heel and the bruising or crushing of the head of the
head of the snake, which makes it clear now. I had no idea that Kabbalah was teaching this. That you know, they're awaiting for Leviathan, which is a holy serpent, which is their God or their Messiah, actually. So this brings the entire verses in the Bible alive for me, because now I can identify who that serpent is, who the snake is. And you have to understand that these Judaism worships Satan. This is a true God of Israel. They are worshiping Satan. Talmud worships Satan. So the entire state of Israel, as Bibi Netanyahu declared the Talmud as the legal code of the state, you cannot, as a Christian with a good conscience, you cannot support the state of Israel. How can you support satanic state?
Exactly. And that is the truth of it, is when you really dig deep, you learn, and the Bible tells us that there will be enmity between the seed of the woman and the seed of the serpent, and that they worship the devil. And there is a group, there's a faction here, and that these people have been ruling from behind the scenes, sitting on the thrones of the world for a very long time, declaring the divine right to rule. And we have not recognized them as enemy. And so that's been the problem. But now, you know, in this day and age where all things are being revealed, the Most High is bringing to knowledge that this, in fact, is going on. And even with, you know, Donald Trump, everybody believed him to be, and a lot of Christians believe him to be, you know, like a Cyrus type figure. But yet he's blood related to Hillary Clinton, They have a blood relation going back to Edward III, and so they're all of the same family, and they have
Yes.
all been working together in tangent behind the scenes, and so he's not going to be any different. Even Obama, he was related as well. And in every election, going back for a very long time, George Bush and Al Gore, George Bush and John Kerry, even Obama and McCain, it's been cousins up against their other cousin from the same bloodline, the same family. And so, we're given the illusion of choice, but it's all been figured out beforehand, and they are all of the same bloodline. So how do you expect anything different?
Well, when it comes to Donald Trump, uh, when I started studying Talmud and Kabbalah, and I fully understood who Donald Trump is, it's a huge mistake to support Donald Trump and think that he's going to make any changes for the humanity, for us, the people in the United States. He's definitely compromised on the Zionists. And the first thing he did, he declared his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, I believe he's his first advisor, senior advisor position in the White House. Now, you have to understand that Jared Kushner and Ivanka are members of the Chabad Lubavitch sect. It's a sect of Judaism that are Kabbalistic Talmudic Jews. And this type of man is his senior advisor. Mm-hmm. So we have a Chabad Lubavitch in the White House, which is a huge problem.
Let me make a comment real quick, too, when it comes to the Chabad organization, because I was a member as well. And we have to keep in mind, those that are listening in tonight, not every Jew is part of this satanic group. I mean, let's face it, Yeshua in the Hebrew Matthew spoke about the Pharisees, and he in the Hebrew Matthew literally says they were seed of the vipers.
Right.
The seed of vipers. All right, now, but the thing is, there was still a remnant in his day that were mixed in amongst these people, amongst the Jewish people, that believed that he was indeed the Messiah.
Yes.
And the same today. We still have the same thing today. I mean, there are Orthodox Jews today becoming believers almost on a daily basis. I've got one friend there that witnesses to rabbis every single day and having tremendous success. But at the same token, though, if you're part of the Chabad organization, it's a very demonic system, but on the outset, it's kind of like, I guess you'd say, like a Mason. Many people are Masons, and they just think it's a normal organization. It's not till you get to that top hoop up there that the really deep set of the demonic side is revealed to those groups there. It's the same thing in the Chabad organization as well. It seems all, kind of, pardon the expression, but kosher on the top. But, the deeper you get in, the more involved you get into these groups here, the more you find out. And I've got one friend specifically, and I can't call his name. He does work with the Mossad, that he's starting to get his eyes open a little bit about the evils that are going on, but yet at the same time, very much he is very pro this global domination that is going to happen amongst Israel. And he has even warned me. He's warned me, Zan, and told me, he said, Steve, he says, you have no idea what we're about to do to your country. He said, America is finished. He said, Israel is embracing China for the new global military power, and America is finished. He said, Russia will drop a few nukes, limited nukes on the country, and then the next thing you know, he said, guess what's going to happen then? He said, we're going to genocide your people.
Well, they're not hiding that at all. I mean, it is out in the open. And certainly you have been bringing step by step the dominoes falling, which is the setup for this whole agenda. And even the visions of certain individuals like Dmitry Duduman have been seeing this for a very long time. And so God has warned us that this is the agenda. And certainly it seems to be shaping up in that manner as well. But I wanted to ask you both, Jana and Stephen, as well as some of the other sinister aspects of the Talmud, which most people are not aware about, like, for instance, their support of pedophilia and also their perspective and opinion on Yeshua. Of course, they deny him as Savior Messiah, but their hatred of him. Can you comment on some of that as well?
Yes, there are many, many false teachings in Talmud. Very shocking once you start reading it, if you can stomach it, that is,
Right.
because it's almost to the point of vomiting once you study it, and you just can't believe that this is actually in a Talmud, and they're embracing it. They hold the Talmud as unchanging word of God. Okay, so one of the teachings in first of all, before we go into some of the teachings, I want to tell you that every time Talmud quotes a scripture, the Tanakh, the true Torah, okay, which is Tanakh, every time they quote it, they reverse it and they oppose it and they change it. So you can see very much when you study Talmud that it is in opposition to the Tanakh, to the true Torah, and in opposition to Christ and true God.
Right.
This is, I encourage everybody. There is a free Sonsino Talmud on Amazon that you can download. Start reading it and start looking at websites that quote it, because you will be shocked. And every single Christian needs to know this, because I have this feeling that Christians don't know who the enemy is. Everybody thinks it's the Muslims, and I'm not saying Muslims are right, but really it's not the Muslims that are a problem. The problem are the Talmudic Jews and the Talmud. Yes, as you mentioned, pedophilia, and Steve has brought this out in his recent YouTube video. Can you, Steve, tell us some of the teachings?
Yeah, some of the things on the Talmud that are very disturbing is when it comes to boys, sex with boys. The Talmud goes into very deep language on this, and they basically justify it. Now, you have to understand, and you're going to see, if you look up on the internet, you're going to see all kind of apologetics about what I'm about to say here, because although the Talmud does speak about them being, that, in other words, the Talmud will say, if a boy is under the age of 9 years old, it is not considered to be homosexuality. And so therefore, the person would not be guilty of homosexuality if a man has some type of a sexual relation with a boy that young. And the same thing when it comes to a girl. In fact, one rabbi actually writes that if a girl under 3 years old, a girl that is 3 years and 1 day old, anything after that, it is if you were to poke someone in their eye. That's the only crime that it would be equivalent to, because of their laws. In fact, I'm going to see if I can pull it up real quick on some of these, so I can actually read it to you verbatim, because it's just really disgusting to see these things that are actually there, and to makes you wonder, where in the world do they allow, how did this ever get into a book like this to begin with? Let me put it away there. And that's just, these are some of the ones that most people look at, but the Talmud has got many, many writings in there that are just horrifying, especially against women. And let me say this before, and I'll have, maybe Jana can speak a little bit while I'm looking this up for you guys, but let me just say this real quick about the ones against women there. This is why I am seeing cases inside the specifically the Hebrew Roots movement, because they have embraced a lot of the not only the the 613 laws that are in Levitical law, but they've also, in many cases, have embraced the Talmud. I mean, I've got communities all over the United States that have contacted me to where they're beginning to divide. They say that, their community, part of the community wants to embrace Talmud, the other part says no. And those that are embracing it are saying about the things that are not good. They say, well, you can't throw out the baby with the bathwater. Now I'm like, you got to be kidding me. I mean, it's putrefied. But when it comes to the women, though, the demoralization, the degradation of women is unbelievable. A woman is almost as if she were a dog in their view. And, and it's totally opposite of what Yeshua.
And I don't know if you mentioned, Steve, that they are allowing sex with a girl of 3 years and 1 day old.
Yes, that's what we're talking about. I'm actually going
to
pull it up while you and Zen and Laurel talk a little bit here.
Yeah,
And
they're saying in Talmud, if it's a Gentile toddler, the toddler is to be killed because she tempted the man.
Oh my gosh.
That's under Jewish law. And yesterday, if anybody watches our chat, I have pulled up a video by Yossi Gurwitz. Yossi Gurwitz is a journalist, and he's an ex-Orthodox Jew who attended elite yeshiva in the state of Israel. He was trained in a Talmud day and night. I mean, he is even writing about how long they have to study Talmud for 7 days a week. And he's the one who confirms it in his video. If you watch our chat, we have shown this, and I have posted links. That's our last video on our channel. I have posted links to him, so you guys can watch it all out in the open. He's confirming that if a Jew has a sex with a 3-year-old toddler who is a Gentile, the Gentile toddler must be killed. That's according to halakha, which is a Jewish law based on Talmud. Now, that's just one aspect of Talmud, but what Talmud teaches about Christ. I mean, of course, Christ was a blasphemer, idolater, right? His mother Mary was a whore, okay?
Right.
Stuff like that. But what do they teach about Gentiles? Talmud teaches that Gentiles are not even humans. Talmud teaches that God created Gentiles in the form of man for one reason, that when they have to serve the Jew, so the Jew doesn't feel like, doesn't look at the animal. Do you understand? So that's the only reason you look a human, if you're not a Jew, that if you are serving him, he doesn't have to have a feeling that some dog is serving him, that you have a human form for his good. But other than that, your soul, the Gentile soul, is out of evil spheres, originates in 3 evil spheres, while the Jewish soul is divine, and the only purpose for Gentile is to serve the Jew. That's the Talmudic teaching. I have actually some teachings of the Talmud. For example, let me just read you a few teachings, okay? If a Jew is tempted to do evil, he should go to a city where he is not known and do the evil there. That's in a Talmud. That's halakha. Non-Jews are not human. Only Jews are human. Only Jewish men are designated as men. Gentile men are not even considered men. They are animals. Women even worse. Okay, women, even Jewish women don't have a high status. So Gentile women are totally without any status. Another one, Jews are divine. That's in the book of Sanhedrin 58b. And if a Gentile hits a Jew, the Gentile must be killed. Hitting a Jew is the same as hitting God himself. Okay? Jews have superior legal status. That's in the book of Baba Kama 37b. All right? Another, I'm just kind of reading them off. Sanhedrin 76a, and that's a book. I'm quoting you books from the Talmud. Talmud is organized in books, similarly as Bible is, like we have 66 books, right? Okay, so Sanhedrin 76a verse says, God will not spare a Jew who marries his daughter to an old man or takes a wife for his infant son or returns a lost article to a Gentile. So meaning that if you lose something and you're a Gentile and Jew finds it, he's not to ever give it back to you because God won't spare you. Can you believe this?
It's horrible.
It is not only horrible, it's barbaric and sometimes so like literally stupid, Zen, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So
Right,
how
right.
can that kind of book be declared a legal code in so-called democratic free state of Israel?
Right. Or revered by anybody, you know?
I have right now, Zan, and this is, to me, it's important that when we bring these accusations that is indicting on the Orthodox community, that we actually cite the very location in the Talmud where these things can be found at. So we're going to be going to Yabamoth, which is Yebamoth, section 12b. It's actually 12a and 12b in this part of the Talmud. And I'm going to read just some highlights here. And you got to keep in mind.
Hey, Stephen, just so you know, we're 1 minute out from break. So let's save the,
Okay.
when we get back from break for you to read the fullness of it. But, please do share comment on what
Sure.
you're about to go into.
Yes. So definitely what we're about to get into is we're going to be looking at some of the sexual sins that are written in here in the Talmud. And so you can hear verbatim what's there, because on the internet, all kinds of apologetics.
All right, we'll be right back, everyone, for second hour. All right, welcome back, everybody, for second hour. I'm your host, Zen Garcia. This is Secrets Revealed here on Truth Frequency Radio. I have as co-host with me this evening Laurel Austin, and as special guests both Stephen and Jana Ben Noon of Israeli News Live. Laurel, let me give you a chance to comment here, and then we'll turn it over to Stephen.
I'm just thinking about the Bible scriptures that talk about how in the end our perceived brothers will be giving us up. Does that tie into this at all, Stephen and Jana?
Can you
Well, yes. I know what you're talking about. You're talking about, if I understand correctly, Laurel, you're talking about where Yeshua says, that a mother or father, the daughter will go against her mother, the father, the son against the father, things like that. Is that what you're speaking about there?
Yeah, and it seems like there's other verses too that our brothers will be giving us up, thinking they're doing a good thing.
Oh, yes.
That they're serving
they
God.
will kill you, think
Yeah.
they do God a service. And
That's
I know
exactly
that's
what it is.
paraphrased,
Yeah.
but that's the other scripture as well. And that is coming to a place of exactly that.
Yes, Laurel, because if you think about it, who supports Israel more than American people?
Right.
I mean, American Christians. Talk about tourist dollars. Talk about donations to all kinds of Israeli causes. Okay? Talk about love, unconditional love and support of Israel. And as a state, as the United States of America, how much money do we give to Israel?
Foreign aid. Yes.
Foreign aid to Israel goes, I mean, it's amazing. We just had ex-Congresswoman Cynthia McKinney on, who was talking about how AIPAC is having power over congressmen and how they are all paid and bought. Okay, and first they have to sign pledge that they're going to support Israel before they support United States people.
Well, now she got, as a whistleblower, she got that law changed because she blew the whistle that AIPAC was forcing the congressmen and the senators to sign a pledge that they believed that Jerusalem was the capital of Israel and that the loyalty to Israel is what they stand for. And of course, she said that if you didn't sign it, you got no funding.
Yeah.
And then, but she also, slipped my mind what the other one was. But
anyway, so what Laura was saying, that the Christians in the United States consider Jews their brothers, okay, because innocently they all think that what Jews believe is Tanakh, that all they do is the Old Testament, and they just didn't see, they're blinded, and they don't see Jesus is Messiah, but the day is coming when all Jews going to be saved. And that's what's being told in pulpits.
Right.
However, that's not really true, because they are not doing the Tanakh. They're not keeping true God's Torah. This is not a Torah-keeping state. This is a Talmudic state, and there is only a very small remnant of them that will believe. In fact, and they are very persecuted, and they're not even called Jews anymore, because if you are a believer in Yeshua and you are a Jewish person who believes in Jesus and you live in Israel, the rabbis and a state do not recognize you as a Jew. And according to halakha, you have no right to live in Israel because you converted to Christianity. That's the law. And this is what Christians don't know. So as Laurel says, yes, they will actually turn on Christians. And with these Noahide laws prepared.
And Christians are going to turn on Christians.
Yeah, and then some Christians who are still blindly supporting this, violating every principle of Jesus Christ, because I'm very angry at Talmud. Talmud is satanic, and it's a worship of Satan. Okay.
Yes.
And it just does not go together. If you are a believer in Jesus Christ, Yeshua, you cannot, with a good heart and good conscience, support this. How can you?
Right.
Israel today is one tribe. We don't even hear about Benjamin anymore. But there are 12 tribes that make up Israel. And Yeshua said he came for the lost sheep.
Exactly, especially Golan, right? There is this problem, is Golan part of Israel? Well, Golan didn't belong to Judah. They have no rights to...
That was the thing, too. And I recently looked at this because the debate has been so big and on the Golan. And biblically speaking, in Isaiah, the Golan belonged to the Gentiles. That was, Yeshua came up to the border of Naphtali, and his land actually goes right there to the Jordan River by the Galilee, but it literally says that it belonged to the Gentiles, and it was in Isaiah and in the book of Matthew that confirmed this. So I thought that was kind of interesting. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that we should just hand the thing back over to Syria. I don't know if it's going to make anything better, but in reality, if we're going to stand with the Word of God, and as Laurel pointed out, there's 12 tribes, not 3. It's not the house of Judah, with the Benjamites, and some of the Levites, which I question that as well. But, I do want to stress Tuesday, and I think it's really important, and I want to hold up, because I know we got to get back to this other issue here, but please don't lose heart, though, people. As far as the remnant, this is what Paul's speaking of in Romans 11. The remnant is, when he says all Israel shall be saved, that is a remnant from every age, from the time, because he clearly shows you from the time of Elijah and the days of Yeshua, and then we have in a future coming another remnant. And so, hey, what if it's only 5% of the Jews living in Israel that end up believing? There's your remnant. Because believe me, Yeshua said there were the weeds that were sown on top of the wheat. In fact, if you look at the Hebrew word in the Hebrew Matthew about that, that's even more provocative. That's almost like an inbreeding that corrupted the seed.
So which brings us to the point how to support Israel, right? We support Israel by supporting gospel going to them so the remnant can hear it.
Yes.
Not by supporting. Well, let's just think about this. Look at the examples in the Bible. What did Jesus do? He preached to the Jews, right? He came to the Jews first. Then he was calling them out from this Talmudic system. At that time, it wasn't Talmud. It was called traditions of the elders.
Yes.
And he was calling them out to himself. And then what did apostles do? The same thing. They were coming out of that system, right? Mm-hmm. So the early believers that were Jews, they actually tried to help their own people to come out of the Talmudic system, but it was such a tiny number, that remnant that believed. So aren't we supposed to go by their example? And, there are some preachers out there that say that we are not to preach to Jews, that they have their covenant with God, like Mr. Hagee, for example, the pastor Hagee. Okay, he says that we shouldn't convert the Jews and preach to the Jews, that they already have their covenant and they serve God of Israel. Well, Mr. Hagee is wrong, and he's misleading a lot of people, because Jews do not serve God of Israel. They're serving Talmudic God, which is Satan, which they admit in Kabbalah, as I said earlier, because they are worshiping holy snake, the Leviathan, according to their teaching. So they admitted that their God is Satan, basically. So what are we to do? How are we to support Israel? Is not to support the state, the political beastly system, but we are to support the believers, to support anybody who is preaching to the Jewish people and who is trying to help them to come out from that system. That's the way that true Christians should support them.
Right. I would add really quickly that in the protocols, it speaks of the great serpent of Zion in similarity to what you're speaking about with Leviathan and the Talmud. But Stephen, let me turn it back over to you, brother.
Yeah, going back now to the Talmudic writings here, I'm going to read to you some of these. And as I mentioned before, we're in Yabamoth 12a and 12b specifically. And you have to understand, for those of you that may not know, the rabbinical teaching is that the final authoritative word comes from a rabbi and not from even God himself. I'll have to go into that a little bit later, but this is why the Talmud is considered with such authority, which is kind of weird, because how could this be the oral law of Moses when all these rabbis disagree with each other? Anyway, here we go. This one here says, from the age of 11 years and 1 day until the age of 12 years and 1 day, one who is under or over this age must carry on her marital intercourse in the usual manner. All right, this is just one of many I'm going to share with you. Now, this is the opinion of Rabbi Meir. The sages, however, say the one as well as the other carries on her marital intercourse in the usual manner, and mercy will be vouchsafed. Okay? But you can't imagine, how could a girl that young even be carrying on such an activity, right? Here's the other one. Rabbah said, we also learned a similar barita, a girl who is 3 years of age and 1 day may be betrothed by cohabitation if a lever cohabited with her. He has thereby acquired her. One incurs through her the guilt of intercourse with a married woman. She defiles her cohabitor in respect of his imparting defilement to the lower as well as the upper couch. If she married to a priest, she may eat teruma, and anyone ineligible who cohabitated with her causes her ineligibility. What are we doing with a 3-year-old being married?
Right.
Years old, 1 day though.
Or betrothed with cohabitation, which is sexual intercourse.
All right, right. Now I still got a couple more here I need to read to you here, so let me not miss here. Jeremiah of Dafiti said, we also learned the following: a maiden aged 3 years and a day may be acquired in marriage, and if her deceased husband brother cohabited with her, she becomes his. This is crazy. At 9 years, a male attains sexual matureness. Okay? And thus the point of comparison is the sexual matureness of a woman, which is reached at the age of 3.
That's just...
My goodness.
It's insane.
Yeah.
You know, all right, here's another one. A male aged 9 years and a day who cohabits with his deceased brother's wife, the former having left no issue, acquires her as a wife. And of course, there are several other ones that are in the same section of here that is speaking of the same 9-year-old boy, that if a man has sexual relation with him, he is not guilty of homosexuality, the sin which would be punishable by death. So, you know, oh, here's the one I wanted to read that is important too. When a grown-up man has intercourse with a little girl, it is nothing, for when the girl is less than this, it is as if one puts the finger into the eye. But when a small boy has intercourse with a grown-up woman, he makes her as a girl who is injured by a piece of wood.
Can you believe? I mean, it's literally, it's painful to read this, you know.
It's disgusting.
Yeah.
It is.
It really is.
Yeah. Now let me read you some more, like about Jesus. For example, in the book of Sanhedrin 43a, which reminds me that we have to remind people that Sanhedrin is in Israel now, just like it was 2,000 years ago. And it's gaining power more and more. And in fact, Sanhedrin is calling to replace United Nations. They want to create this Sanhedrin International Court with all the judges being in Jerusalem, and they will judge the world from there. The Gentiles are going to be judged based on whether they keep Noahide laws, and of course Jews will be judged whether they keep their halakha, the Jewish law, the Talmudic law. And just to assure the Gentiles are going to obey, they're creating these Noahide judges who are usually ex-Christians who gave up belief in Jesus and they became Noahides, who are going to Jerusalem to be trained by Sanhedrin professionally. They're getting certificates and training. They're learning Hebrew so they can communicate with the rabbis in their secret writings and all of that. And they're creating these Noahide houses that will be actually places of judgment. And they're saying they have to be in every city. So they're popping up everywhere, especially through the Bible Belt area. So this is pretty scary. But let me go back and read you some of the teachings in a Talmud. For example, in the book of Sanhedrin, verse 43, part A, says that Jesus, which is Yeshua, it says that he was executed because he practiced sorcery. Okay? It says in a book of Gittin 57a that Yeshua is being boiled in hot excrement. It says that in book of Sanhedrin 43a, Jesus deserved execution. Sanhedrin 90a says those who read the New Testament will have no portion in the world to come. In the book of Sabbath 11:6a, page 569, it says that Jews must destroy the books of Christians, which means New Testament, of course. Okay. The book of Sabbath 41a says that the law regulating the rule for how to urinate in a holy way is given. I mean, sometimes you come to some strange, really weird laws, like how you should urinate, for example. Book of I know it's almost funny, you know. Sometimes you just think like it's so demonic, you know. In the book of Yebamot 63a states that Adam had sexual intercourse with all the animals in a Garden of Eden. In the book of Yebamot 63a, it says, declares that agriculture is the lowest of occupation. Just to let you know a few things, you know. Then Sanhedrin 54b says a Jew may have a sex with a child as long as the child is less than 9 years old. That's mostly. Sanhedrin 55b says a Jew may marry a 3-year-old girl, most specifically 3 years and 1 day old. The book of Ketubah 11b, it says when a grown man has intercourse with a little girl, it's nothing. And I think that's what Stephen was reading you. It says in book of Baba Meriza 59b, a rabbi debates God and defeats him, and God admits the rabbi won the debate. Can you believe this?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. How Jews know that Talmudic Jews are putting rabbis even over God?
Right.
They're teaching their people that the word of rabbi is the word of God, basically. So what we are dealing with here is the huge Judaic cult. It's a cult,
Yes, yes.
right? And then every time that Talmud mentions Tanakh, which is true Torah, it always reverses it. Like, let me give you an example. For example, we just had Purim, okay?
Yes.
There was a celebration of Purim in Israel. We know Book of Esther. And when you read the Tanakh, what we know of a story of Esther, who was Mordecai, right? It says that Mordecai took her as a daughter. He was her uncle, correct?
Right.
All right, but in a book, in a Talmud, it reverses. It actually says that Mordecai was a husband of Esther. And that's what Jews believe. They don't believe the Tanakh. They don't believe the story in the Old Testament. They're saying that Mordecai was a husband of Esther, and that Esther was forcefully taken by the Gentile king. But he was able to meet with her, and she had regular miklas, and then she had this secret sex with her husband Mordecai after miklas. And it also says in the Talmud that it wasn't really Esther who saved the nation of Israel from annihilation. It says it was actually Mordecai who gave the commandment to the Jews to fast. And because they fasted, God heard them. It was nothing that Esther did. Now, that comes from the fact that they will not give any credit to woman in anything.
Right.
So, and then also the commandment in Purim, which when we were in Israel, and one time we were there during Purim, I saw a bunch of very drunk Jews, Orthodox Hasidic Jews, just drunk. And I just couldn't believe my eyes. I'm seeing drunk Jews, and I had no idea until I studied the Talmud that Talmud gives a commandment to Jews to drink so heavily on a day of Purim until they cannot distinguish good from bad. So they have to be totally drunk. If you do not believe me, please put in a Google Jews drinking or getting drunk on Purim. And you will see a lot of videos, and they're actually defending it. Yes, this is a commandment of the Lord from the Torah, which Torah, when they say Torah, you always think first Babylonian Talmud. So they have actually this commandment. That has nothing to do with Tanakh. No such commandment came out of the mouth of God.
Maybe they're confusing it with St. Patrick's Day.
It's like I'm just giving you an example how Talmud totally reverses Tanakh. I mean, the purpose of Talmud is to bury the Tanakh as nothing. And this is what
says,
American
with excess with
this is what American Christians who support Israel and Jews unconditionally, they don't understand. They just don't know these things. And I know the one problem is lack of education, because not the priests, but the pastors they themselves don't know, So this is why I really call on Christians, you know what? Study the Talmud, because you need to know your enemy. You need to know what you're dealing with. And then you have to decide in your heart, honestly, what kind of values you have in your heart, what kind of love you have for Jesus and his commandments and his standards. And he was asking these people out of that system. In fact, in the book of Revelation, we have a call. We have a very serious call, and it's a call to Jewish people and Gentile people, where it says, come out of her, my people.
Yes.
And come out of this Talmudic Babylonian system, pagan system. So we absolutely have to give gospel to the Jews and give education to Christians of what we're dealing with and what that head of a snake is, who the snake is.
Right. Yeah, Bill in the chat room, he says that in the spirit of Purim, that the Sanhedrin are the is Haman. And so, with him, the seed of the serpent and the representing those who want to kill the true believers, because we are the true believers now,
Exactly.
And yeah,
Yes, that's right. Because Apostle Paul said it, that not all who are of Israel are Israel. Not all Jews who are
right,
Jews are real Jews. Meaning that we are when you believe in Yeshua, when you are fed from the root, which is Jesus Christ, you are the son of Abraham.
yes.
Okay, and this is something and that's not replacement theology. We have never replaced any tree. That tree, which is Israel of God, has a root, and that root is Christ. And that tree has branches. And yes, there are some Jewish branches, and added to those branches are from wild olive tree. The branches, because the bad ones are cut off, and from wild olive tree are put back in on the same tree. Nobody changed that tree. Nobody replaced it. It's still the same tree. And we all can be on that tree if we are fed by the root, which is Jesus and his commandments. And, sometimes what are his commandments? Well, his commandments are love your neighbor as yourself.
Yes.
And what is the state of Israel doing? Well, they're killing all of their neighbors.
Right.
Right? They're inciting wars. And United States of America is fighting not our wars. We are not fighting anything for United States people. We are always fighting Israeli wars.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
One thing, Zen, I would say about when it comes to what Jana's talking about there, when we speak about always fighting Israeli wars, we may not perceive it that way at first. Like, for example, most people would say, well, 9/11, that was an attack on our freedoms here in America. But what the people don't realize is just the evidence itself that points to all the different elite Zionists that were involved in the attack on 9/11. And this is one reason why George Bush quickly declared that we were at war. We were at war with Al-Qaeda. And as long as he declares that we were at war with Al-Qaeda.
Hold on, Stephen. I'll give you a chance to pick it up on the other side. We'll be right back, everyone. All right, welcome back, everybody, for final segment. Stephen, I want to turn it back over to you, brother, to give you a chance to finish up your thought.
Yes, absolutely. I actually forgot what my thought was, but
you were thinking about 9/11.
Okay, yes, 9/11. Thank you, Zen. So the thing is, there is so many crimes that are being committed. And Zen, I know these things because I spent 7 years in the CIA back in 1983 to 1990, and I've seen a lot of crimes. At the time, I didn't really think about it as much because, need to know basis. The deeper I got, though, the more I learned about things. It was only as I went back years later and began to realize some of the most prominent cases in American history, crimes that have never been solved. I was very privy to the information behind it. And to make a long story short, and some things that I can't really speak publicly as of yet, but I'll say this much here. The United States government was very heavily involved in drug trafficking in order to be able to supply arms for all the different wars that we were fighting around the world. And that still goes on to this day. And the thing is if you go and you begin to search these wars are wars in order to conquer these nations. Venezuela, for example, is a good case in point. And I know this because I have sources in the Mossad group that have told me that Venezuela, I was told this back in October of last year, that they were going to put a de facto president in Venezuela and take the other guy out, and that they already had boots on the ground. the intelligence, CIA, as well as Mossad. They had their people on the ground to destabilize the nation. They'd been working on it, doing the sanctions for the last almost 10 years as it was. And the reason for it is because Maduro would not play ball and join up with the New World Order system. Same thing with Syria, same thing that they're going to do to Iran. And I'm not here to sing the glory days for Iran, but nonetheless, all these nations are being taken down because what slipped past my radar is that the Antichrist system that is coming is going to be stationed in Jerusalem. It will be the head of the New World Order. It will be governed by the Sanhedrin Council. And of course, I used to be more focused on the Vatican, but the Vatican plays their own part. They worked with Israel in signing the Nostra Aetate. In fact, I had a special envoy to the United Nations visit me and threaten me if I continued to speak against the Vatican and the Israeli relationship, because they said I was hindering the process of the Nostra Aetate to be signed. But going back to the time I spent with the government there, I know many people that were murdered just to silence them, to keep the information from being made public, that would have exposed, like in the case of the Iran-Contra deal. I wasn't involved with the Iran part, but I was involved with the Contra deal, and I knew very well that the United States was sending weapons to the Contras, and they were using the drug money to do so. And of course, there were a lot of politicians that their pockets were being padded to turn the other cheek and to make sure everything went very smooth. And so when we had, for example, Miss McKinney on, former Congresswoman Cynthia McKinney, on our program the other day, and she spoke about AIPAC and the influence that they have in D.C., I can attest to that. And I know, and even Zen to this day, I know other cases right now, ones that I'm investigating myself, that implicates President Trump as well as being involved in some of these conspiracies that have Chabad organization connections, Russian mafia connections, Paul Manafort, Rick Gaines, and Donald Trump, all involved in laundering money. And I mean, the list just goes on and on and on and on and on. And it's all, at the end of the day, it's for one reason. It's for, people like to say, the Greater Zionist Project. It's not really a Greater Zionist Project. It is a new world order. But the thing is what people are not going to realize is that, as it says in Daniel 11, the violent among your people, the angel Gabriel says to Daniel, will try to establish the vision or marry the vision. Musa is the Hebrew word there, to try to marry the vision, but they shall stumble. So there's a good consolation there. They're going to come pretty doggone close, but they're going to stumble in the process. But unfortunately, it's not going to be until many Christians have lost their heads for the stand for Yeshua, those that will stand for him, and not the ones that will be cowards and back off and say, "Oh, no problem. We can believe that he's just a prophet because the rabbis say so." And we know that they have the authority on the earth because they quote from Deuteronomy chapter 17, starting at verse 8, where it speaks about the Levites and the judge shall be in those days and inquire, and they shall tell you the sentence of judgment. And they pervert the scriptures and trying to get the people to believe that they're going to be the ones with the absolute authority. And that's how they're going to set up this New World Order system. My head is spinning right now. So,
can you hear us, Zen?
Yes, I apologize. I was just saying that even with what, them passing the Noahide laws in 1991, and that George Bush even spoke about then, about how they had this opportunity to establish the New World Order that they planned centuries, decades and centuries in advance, and they slowly implement over time the agenda. And that's why it's so difficult for us to recognized as far as the masses. But now it's so in your face that they are openly challenging anybody to try and stop them, because they have everything in place to really bring it forth, and it's just a matter of a few dominoes here, a few dominoes there, and then even like with the passing of the Patriot Act after the events of 9/11, all that was written and in place, and nobody even read it, and they passed it into law, and now everybody is guilty until proven innocent, and Christians and patriots are targeted as domestic terrorists. They have this whole alternative military tribunal system, extraordinary rendition, the torture, and everything like that. You can be disappeared and extricated and put into one of these CIA black sites, and just for being a Christian or a patriot, So those kind of things are also in place. We know that they have all this FEMA camps and all of that set up, and the FEMA containers as far as the different corpses and all of that. And just like with World War II, all that infrastructure was in place for Hitler, and the concentration camps and all that had been built prior to the war breaking out. And so in similarity, we are facing those kind of times, and yet everybody is slumbering and marrying and giving in marriage and acting as like nothing's going on. Yana,
Yeah.
did you care to comment?
Then there is a movie called While You Were Sleeping,
Right.
What happened while we were all sleeping, and our attention was on Vatican, which is righteous, because Vatican is definitely in cahoots with the
Yes.
Talmud, and they
Right.
have embraced and signed Noahide laws. I don't know if you know, in the year of 2007, the Pope has signed Noahide laws and his agreement with the Orthodox Chabad community. The Noahide laws are a base of it's a base law for all humanity. So Vatican fully agrees, and they're into this game together with the Jews. Okay, and yes, I don't know if you know who Schneerson is. Do you know who Schneerson is?
No.
Okay, when we talk about Chabad and when we talk about Jared Kushner and Ivanka, well, something has happened before Trump's election. Jared Kushner and Ivanka went to the grave of Rabbi Schneerson, and they have prayed to him for victory for Donald Trump. Also, when Donald was targeted for assassination, they also went to the grave of Rabbi Schneerson. He's buried in New York. They went to the grave and they prayed for help from Rabbi to help. Dead rabbi. I'm talking about dead rabbi, and they're praying to him to help Donald Trump. And rabbinic community has declared that it was actually Rabbi Schneerson, the dead Rabbi Schneerson, who prevented assassination of Donald Trump. I don't know if you know this. You can look it up.
Oh my goodness.
Well, when we are talking about Noahide laws in education law, it has passed under the name of Education Day USA, and that is celebrated in the White House and by all 50 states regularly every year on the birthday of Rabbi Schneerson.
Oh, wow.
Yes, Rabbi Schneerson was a Chabad, Hasidic, Kabbalistic, Talmudic Jew, a leader of Chabad organization, who was portrayed by many Chabad Jews as their Messiah, and they're still believing that he's coming back as a reincarnated Messiah. Okay, and the White House and all 50 states now are celebrating every single year his birthday.
Wow.
Now, there is a Jew by name Israel Shahak. Now, Israel Shahak is a Jewish man. He died not too long ago, but he was a chemistry professor at the Hebrew University in Israel, and he has translated from Hebrew some of the work of Rabbi Schneerson. the one that the White House is celebrating birthday every year. And in that was like a shocking thing to read in English, because until he translated this work to English, nobody knew what Schneerson was writing about. Well, Rabbi Schneerson was a racist rabbi. He wrote heavily against the Gentiles. He wrote that Gentile souls are from three evil spheres, that basically Talmudic doctrines. That's what he was writing. And he was the one who was promoting Noahide laws all over Europe, Russia, United States, everywhere, even China. So he's the one responsible. And his group, the Chabad Jews, are the ones who are actually having it passed with governments, because somehow they got the upper hand with the governments of the world. So there is, if we had right now a picture, I could show you picture of every president since Nixon who meets on Rabbi Schneerson's birthday with the Chabad Jews, Orthodox Jews, and they're signing every single year, they're re-signing Noahide law proclamation.
Wow.
President Trump has done that last year, and he's going to do it on April 11th this year. And they are always doing it every single year, reassuring that it's re-signed over and over again, okay? And every president does it. They're selling out American people, okay? And they're always doing it before Passover, few days before Passover.
Wow.
Yeah. So
if that's not a slap in the face.
It is.
The message of Christ.
That's right. And if you want more information on this, with pictures, with videos that we are providing, all kinds of proofs to people, every Wednesday we meet with Steve for Steve and Jana chat. And I don't know if Steve already created a playlist, but we had about 6 chats. We are doing it for past 6 weeks now. And you can go to our channel. He's going to create playlist. I will make sure he don't forget, because he forgot to do that. So you can go to playlist and play each one and watch it. It's extremely urgent, important education for Christians about Noahide laws, Schneerson, what White House is doing, how they are selling out Christians, about Talmud, and we are bringing a lot of rabbis, videos of rabbis from Israel and United States that are promoting these Noahide laws. And basically they're telling you that they're going to be forced on people.
Mm-hmm.
When the New World Order fully comes in, meaning after martial law, then when this nation goes to martial law, this is when they're going to enforce it. Of course, you don't feel it now. It's not being enforced. Everything is just being prepared.
Right.
And this is why support of Jews and Israel and Talmud and all kinds of excuses and so-called Judeo-Christian values. I was just writing on my Facebook, to me, this is oxymoron thing, because understand that Judaism is Talmudism. There is no such thing as Judeo-Christian values, because Christians don't have values of Talmud.
Right.
At least they shouldn't. That's for sure.
Right.
Well, many, there are some apologists that will actually tell you that Talmud is oral law and it's perfectly legal. And there are some movements in America right now, and these are Jews who claim that they believe Jesus is Messiah, and they are saying that he was a Pharisee.
Oh my goodness. How twisted. They got it upside down. They're the ones that conspired his murder.
That's right.
And there's absolutely no evidence whatsoever that Yeshua was ever a Pharisee. None at all.
Right.
And yet, but the thing is, I mean, you have one woman named Doreen Dotan who is using gematria and every other avenue you can think of to try to sway the believers in Yeshua to their side, and even goes so far as to say that Yeshua is on our side. Speaking of the the Talmudist side of Judaism. And the thing is, we know he condemned all of these things. So
right.
why would anybody want to go backwards to begin with? You know, as a Jewish person, when a Jewish person recognizes Yeshua as the Messiah, for them it's liberty, it's freedom. It's freedom of the oppressing laws that we have been under for all these thousands of years, you know, for 3,500 years already. And for them to see and finally wake up and say, oh my gosh, he's the Messiah. And, you know, as the scripture says, you know, you could write the laws on the table of your heart and no longer have to read this mile-long book to be able to understand God's word. And, you know, I mean, face it, if David said he wrote them on the bedpost, he wrote them on the doorpost, listen, 10 commandments will fit on the doorpost and they'll fit on your bedpost legibly. You're not going to get the 613 and you definitely ain't going to get the Talmud written on any of that. So it's just very troubling what's happening.
Yes. And also, it's not that we don't love the Jewish people. We are not self-hating Jews. And when I speak of us, I mean, you know, Steve, everybody knows he's Jewish from both sides. And I am Jewish from my father's side, not mother's side. So in Israel, they don't even consider me Jew because they go by mother's side, right? And this is not the hatred for Jews. It's our love for them, for their souls,
Right.
that makes us to speak so bluntly about this to Christians, because we want Christians to wake up and stop supporting evil, because we want to take Jews out of that evil.
Yes.
Now, how am I going to take Jew out of evil if my Christian friends supported it? You understand? We cannot help Jews. You cannot help blind by supporting their blindness.
And that goes back to where Yeshua said, if the blind lead the blind, don't they both fall in the ditch? And of course, Laodicea, we find out that the believing community of believers in Yeshua are blind, naked, and don't even know it. And of course, who's leading them today? It is the blind Pharisee. And that's something, Zen, that a lot of people don't think about. You know, and I would rather be spending my time and my focus right now trying to help my people to recognize the Messiah rather than having to double back and try to get the believers of Yeshua to wake up instead, because they are actually embracing Israel to such a degree that now it's the blind leading the blind.
Right.
And they're headed right straight for the ditch because in our blindness to recognize the difference between those that want to know Yeshua as Messiah versus a secular government that is bent on giving you an antichrist, it's become a very, very challenging time that we're living in.
Like, for example, you know, Jewish people trained in Talmudism, of course, this Talmud is affecting not only men in yeshivas and Orthodox rabbis and their wives and Orthodox community, it's affecting entire nation. The Talmud and Orthodox rabbi completely control all Jewish people in Israel. And there is a call now for all Jews to come back to Judaism. So they're all going to be affected. And if they don't, there will be penalties. Okay, so they must as well to come back to Judaism. You know, every Jewish man is obligated to say this prayer every single day. Thank you, God, for not making me a Gentile, a woman, or a slave. They say it 3 times a day.
Wow.
This is a Talmudic prayer of every single Jew. When they're praying and nodding his head back and forth, okay.
Don't forget to rock while you do it.
And rocking. And when you watch them and you think, oh, look at them, because I have seen it in Israel and I was with my Christian friends and they were saying, oh, look how they worship God of Israel. They're just blind to Jesus, but they worship God of Israel. No, friends, they are actually reciting Talmudic prayers, and one of these prayers is against you. They're thanking God for not making them a Gentile, a woman, or a slave.
And now they've book for the believers now. The Christians now are going to have their own prayer book. It's called Brit Olam, which means an everlasting covenant. So they came up with a book now for the believers of Yeshua that you're going to have to cite certain prayers. I mean, this is an attack on the freedoms and civil liberties of our nation.
The believers of Yeshua is going to have to deny Jesus. They will have to deny Christ as Messiah and worship of Christ. And there is a book now, Noahide book that they just came up with, and it's in preparation for the third temple. And they're telling you where you can buy it. But once these Noahide laws are enforced on Gentile nations, this Noahide book will be the only prayer book that will be allowed. Yeah. We have had it last night on our chat with Steve. It was a poor quality. We apologize because where we were, we had really bad internet. But we have explained that and provided links for people to look at it because these news came straight from Israel. I mean, they're open about it, Zen. They're not anymore even,
right.
Before,
yeah, they're not trying to hide it at all.
Not anymore. Before it was kind of like in a secret and nobody knew, but now they feel like Israel has become mighty. Israel is leading. Israel is number one in technology, not to mention 5G that was created by Israeli companies. And one purpose is not only depopulation and making us sick, but surveillance. They will be able to watch you 24/7 when you go to bathroom and flush it. I'm not kidding you. This is a number one reason for this 5G. So there will be no secret worship of Jesus anywhere because of 5G.
It's amazing times that we're living in. Certainly seems to me that, be a sign of in the season of where we are with regard to the end of days. Let me give you both chance to give out your website and contact information. Anything that you'd like to share. We've got 2 minutes remaining.
Well, yes, and we thank you guys for having us on tonight. And Israeli News.
It's our pleasure. Thank you.
Yes, IsraeliNewsLive.org. That's our main website. Our YouTube videos load up there automatically as we post those for the last 50 of them there. Denoon Institute. That is actually my pen name that I use in writing books, but that is DENOON. That's where we get into biblical teaching. But of course, the Stephen Jana chat on Wednesday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern airs on Israeli News Live. It is a live broadcast there. And that about sums it up. Israeli News Live, everything. Facebook, Twitter, Israeli News Live. If you want to follow us on Twitter as well, you can do that. And thank you for having us.
Thank you.
And shalom.
Thank you both so much.
Thank you.
We appreciate you. We'll do a follow-up as soon as we can. God bless all. Good night.
God bless you.
Shalom all.